Farm Trucking Asian wanted to do like a race also, which is more like, this is the lead up race to the big race.
He was the face of Fast and Loud, the wild entrepreneur who built Gas Monkey Garage into a global brand. Richard Rawlings lived life in the fast lane. Cars, money, fame, and controversy followed him everywhere. But now, at 54, shocking news has surfaced. Richard Rawlings' sentence is final, and it changes everything. How did the ultimate car hustler go from the king of custom builds to a man saying goodbye forever? Richard Rawlings wasn't just a TV star. He was a brand. His vision took Gas Monkey Garage from a small Dallas shop to an empire spanning restaurants, merchandise, and international fame. He raced across screens, made deals that stunned fans, and lived larger than life. But behind the flashy cars, big smiles, and brash attitude, there were darker battles, controversies, and decisions that now haunt his legacy. Today, we're uncovering the rise and fall of Richard Rawlings, the truth behind the final sentence, and what it all means for the man who once claimed he would never slow down. But before we dive in, ask yourself, how does someone who built an empire of speed suddenly find himself at a dead stop? Long before TV fame, Richard Rawlings was hustling. Born in Fort Worth, Texas, in 1969, he grew up obsessed with cars. By his teenage years, he wasn't just admiring hot rods, he was buying, flipping, and selling them, always chasing the next big deal. That entrepreneurial spirit never left him. Before Gas Monkey Garage, Richard worked as a firefighter, a police officer, and even owned a printing company. But cars were always calling him back. In 2002, he founded Gas Monkey Garage with a simple idea: build outrageous cars, sell them for profit, and do it with style. The timing was perfect. The world of reality television was booming, and when Fast and Loud premiered on Discovery Channel in 2012, Richard Rawlings became a household name. His larger-than-life personality, quick deals, and catchphrases like blood, sweat, and beers made him unforgettable. But success often comes with a price. As Richard's fame skyrocketed, so did the pressure. Could he really keep up the persona and pace that fans demanded? Gas Monkey Garage wasn't just a shop, it became a global brand. From restaurants and bars to merchandise sold worldwide, Richard turned his gritty garage into an empire worth millions. For years, Fast and Loud was one of Discovery's top-rated shows, and Richard was the kingpin. But with every expansion, critics began to question whether Richard was losing sight of the garage itself. Was Gas Monkey about cars, or was it now about fame and money? Some fans accused him of selling out, chasing endorsements instead of builds. Former employees claimed that behind the cameras, the atmosphere was less about brotherhood and more about pressure and profit. Still, Richard pushed harder, fueled by his relentless drive. He once said, "If you're not moving forward, you're standing still. And standing still is death." But what happens when moving forward too fast means leaving destruction in your wake? As Richard Rawlings' empire expanded, so did the number of controversies surrounding him. Fame has a way of magnifying every mistake, and Richard, with his outspoken personality and relentless hunger for growth, often found himself in the crosshairs of critics and former colleagues. One of the most talked about issues was how Gas Monkey Garage operated behind the scenes. While the TV cameras showed laughter, high-energy builds, and million-dollar car deals, employees began hinting that the pressure cooker environment was not as glamorous as it seemed. Some claimed that deadlines were impossible, that shortcuts were taken, and that drama was manufactured to keep audiences hooked. Then came the allegations of ego. Richard's aggressive personality, the very trait that made him a television star, also rubbed people the wrong way. Former partners and co-workers sometimes described him as domineering, more interested in his image than in teamwork. Fans noticed too. They began asking, was Richard Rawlings still the car guy they loved, or had he become a celebrity chasing the next headline? The controversies grew louder when Richard's personal life began spilling into the tabloids. His high-profile divorces, wild lifestyle, and unapologetic bravado made him a target. For some, Richard was living the rock star dream. For others, it was a cautionary tale about a man flying too close to the sun. But controversies are one thing, legal trouble is another. And soon, Richard would learn that even a man who seemed untouchable had limits. When you build an empire as quickly and aggressively as Richard Rawlings did, cracks are bound to show. And those cracks began to appear in the form of lawsuits and legal challenges. One of the most publicized disputes came from former business partners who claimed Richard had cut them out of deals or failed to deliver on promises. In the cutthroat world of high-stakes business, trust is fragile, and Richard's reputation as a relentless negotiator often worked against him. There were also issues surrounding licensing and branding. Gas Monkey wasn't just a garage, it was a name plastered on t-shirts, restaurants, and even live music venues. But with expansion came disagreements about contracts, royalties, and ownership rights. More than once, Richard found himself in court, fighting to protect the empire he had built from the ground up. For fans, these lawsuits were a shock. Richard had always portrayed himself as the deal-maker who never lost. But now, his empire was under attack from multiple directions. Legal fees piled up, reputations were questioned, and suddenly, the future of Gas Monkey didn't look as bulletproof as it once did. Behind closed doors, those close to Richard say he was shaken. For a man who thrived on control, the courtroom battles were a reminder that even the strongest empires can crumble. But what would hurt Richard most wasn't just the lawsuits. It was the realization that the world he built could be slipping away piece by piece. The sentence, the one that would seal his fate, was drawing closer. When the headlines broke that Richard Rawlings' sentence was final, fans around the world were left stunned. For years, Richard had lived a life larger than the cars he built. Full throttle, no brakes. But now, the phrase "final sentence" would forever change how people viewed him. To Richard, the sentence wasn't just about the legal battles he fought or the empire he had built. It was symbolic. The courts may have ruled, contracts may have been finalized, but it also marked the end of an era. Gas Monkey Garage, once the beating heart of his identity, was no longer the same. For many, this sentence was the closing chapter of the Richard Rawlings they knew. The brash car flipper, the unstoppable hustler, the king of fast and loud. The ruling also carried with it financial weight. Years of expansion had left Richard's brand entangled in countless contracts and obligations. The sentence forced him to cut ties with some ventures, sell off interests, and retreat from the aggressive expansion that had once fueled his success. It was a harsh reminder that growth without balance can eventually collapse under its own weight. But perhaps the most painful blow wasn't financial. It was personal. Fans who once adored him began questioning his motives. Was Richard the car-loving Texan they had rooted for? Or was he simply a businessman who had played the game too hard and lost? The sentence had forced everyone, including Richard himself, to reconsider his legacy. And as Richard himself admitted in one interview, when you're on top, everyone's cheering. When you fall, you find out who's really in your corner. Goodbye forever. Those words hit like a gut punch when Richard Rawlings made his announcement. After nearly a decade of Fast and Loud and years of living under the Gas Monkey banner, Richard confirmed what fans feared. His time in the spotlight, at least in the way they knew it, was over. The decision shocked many. For years, Richard seemed unstoppable. He thrived on cameras, loved the hustle, and embraced the chaos. Why would he walk away from the empire he built? The answer, in part, was exhaustion. The sentence had forced him to confront not just legal realities, but also personal truths. Richard was burned out. The endless battles, the pressure of maintaining a brand, and the constant scrutiny had taken a toll. For a man who always seemed to be one step ahead, he finally admitted he needed to stop running. But goodbye forever didn't just mean stepping away from TV. It meant redefining his identity. Without Fast and Loud, without Gas Monkey dominating the airwaves, who was Richard Rawlings? Could he simply return to being a car guy, working quietly in the shop? Or was his larger-than-life persona too ingrained to let go? Fans were left divided. Some mourned the end of an era, while others felt it was long overdue. But one thing was clear: Richard Rawlings had closed the door on the world that made him famous. Still, one haunting question remained. Was this truly the end? Or was Richard Rawlings simply gearing up for his next reinvention? For years, Richard Rawlings' life was defined by lights, cameras, and roaring engines. But after saying goodbye forever, he was forced into a reality few could have imagined: life away from the spotlight. At first, it felt strange. No camera crews following him, no producers setting deadlines, no fans crowding around for autographs. Richard had always thrived on energy, the adrenaline of deals, the chaos of builds, and the constant noise of fame. Now, silence surrounded him. Friends close to Richard said it was both a curse and a blessing. On one hand, the break from fame gave him peace. He could finally breathe without every word or move being dissected by millions. On the other hand, Richard was a showman at heart. The man who once said, "I don't build cars, I build stories," now had to face a life without an audience. So, what did Richard do? He turned inward. Away from the cameras, he focused more on his personal life, relationships, and passions that weren't tied to ratings or profit margins. He spent more time traveling, connecting with old friends, and rediscovering why he fell in love with cars in the first place. But while Richard was adjusting, fans kept asking, would he ever return? Could a man who lived for the hustle truly walk away forever? Or was this just a pit stop before another big comeback? No matter what Richard Rawlings does now, one thing is undeniable: the legacy of Gas Monkey Garage will never be forgotten. For a decade, it wasn't just a workshop in Dallas, it was a cultural phenomenon. From Fast and Loud to branded merchandise sold across the globe, Gas Monkey was a symbol of ambition, rebellion, and fast living. But legacy is complicated. Fans still celebrate the jaw-dropping builds, the high-speed flips, and the chaos that made the show addictive. Yet critics point out that the very empire Richard created also revealed his flaws: the overexpansion, the controversies, and the relentless pursuit of fame. Even among former employees, the legacy of Gas Monkey is mixed. Some look back fondly, grateful for the opportunities and experiences. Others remain bitter, claiming that behind the shiny cars and flashy deals was a machine that chewed people up and spit them out. And then there's Richard himself. When asked about his legacy, he once said, "Gas Monkey is bigger than me. It's bigger than any one person. It's a way of life." Whether fans view that as inspiring or egotistical, one thing is certain: Richard's mark on car culture is permanent. But here's the haunting question: when the dust settles and the cameras fade, will Richard Rawlings be remembered as the visionary who changed the game, or as the man who flew too close to the sun? Richard Rawlings' journey is a reminder that fame, fortune, and fast cars come at a price. He built an empire out of sheer hustle, turned a Dallas garage into a global brand, and became the face of one of TV's most successful automotive shows. For years, he seemed unstoppable. But behind the roaring engines and million-dollar deals was a man fighting battles that money and fame couldn't solve. Legal wars, personal controversies, and the crushing weight of always having to stay on top. The sentence may have been the end of an era, but it also forced Richard to confront the one thing he always tried to outrun: himself. Today, his empire looks different. Gas Monkey isn't the same, the cameras have stopped rolling, and Richard has said his final goodbye to the world that made him a household name. But his legacy lives on in every car he touched, every fan he inspired, and every hustler who dares to dream big. The tragedy and the triumph of Richard Rawlings is that he gave everything to the hustle. And when it was over, he proved that even legends can burn out. But what do you think? Will Richard Rawlings make one last comeback? Or has he truly closed the door on his Gas Monkey era forever? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more untold stories from the stars you thought you knew, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives.